Okay, welcome everybody. We are going to be studying chapter Memtes, which is 49. And last week we learned about Rosh Hashanah. This week we're going to find out about what is Yom Kippur all about. And I'm going to share the screen. Share screen. 1 second. And it's screen 2. Share. And I'm just going to move my picture out of the way, at the background of the Northern Lights. Okay, let's start. Umeyata, now, yesh lahavin, there is to understand, but pratisais spheres, the details, the parts of the 10 spheres, the malchus d'atzilus, of the expression of Atzilus, which is the 10th sphere of Atzilus, meaning to say that understanding how the 9 spheres don't add or subtract to the oneness of God Almighty is part of the upper oneness. And we've been studying the lower oneness, how the things of the world don't add and subtract to God Almighty. And that's really the study of Malchus, which is expression. Sorry. Which is the expression of the divine. And now we need to understand how the 10 spheres, how they reflect themselves in Malchus, in expression, which that is Shu Bechinas Haitanu Varaton Apashut. This is the simple pleasure and want, which is undefined, which now is becoming revealed. That's what expression is. Through the light of this emotion, which this is the crown of Malchus, the crown of expression, Hanal, like we mentioned above. And then afterwards, the light of this pleasure and want becomes focused, which is Shalamaylam and Asechel, it's higher than intellect, Vitam and reasoning. And then it becomes insight and comprehension serving this want. In other words, intellect is not really objective. It's always a servant, it's objective, it's subjective, it's a servant to the want. Why do I want this thing? Well, let's give a logical reasoning, and then we can work with that. And that's what the insight in the emotion of expression, what it does. It serves the want and the pleasure. It's considered the way the Chachma is, the way insight is an expression is considered lower Chachma. Chachmas Shlama, it's the wisdom of Solomon. We say Solomon, King Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech. And from that name we get the name Zalman. Zalman is from Salman, which is Solomon. So he's the wisest of all men. He was actually a reflection of the lower Chachma, the way the Chachma is in Malchus and in expression. So we have, larger than life personalities. Yaakov, Leah, and Rachel. And Shlomo HaMelech was a vehicle and personified the insight from Malchus of Atzilus. Chacham B'Seif, he's considered the wisdom in the end, Sheshar Shabachachma Shabarosh, which his wisdom is actually rooted in the wisdom at the beginning of the whole order of creation. But B'chinas Chachma Atzmis Shemisham Nimshach Chachma L'Ratzon Nazeh. From the essential, it all comes from the essential Chachma. Shemisham Nimshach Chachma L'Ratzon Zu. From there, from that insight, the way it is before Tzimtzum, that eventually becomes the insight L'Ratzon Zu, to this want, Shebeminas HaMalchus, which is in the emotion of expression. Zeu Bereshis Nami Maimer. And the Gemara says that there's 10 expressions God speaks and he creates the world. Well, there's 10 central sayings with which he creates the world. And the Gemara goes through the Psukim and they only finds 9, the Talmud. And then the Gemara says, oh, but in the beginning of creation, in Bereshis Bara Elokim, the beginning of God, in the beginning of the creation of the heaven of the earth, right? That's also one of the 10. And what does that capture? Shu b'chinas chachma, shu b'dibur. It's really the insight in God's words. And it basically feeds, it creates the program, l'yud hamaris, the Lakim, for the 10 other, for all the 10 sayings of the Almighty. Kiyadua, like it's known, v'hu anikra b'chinas meichin nukva. The Zoh. And he is really the intellect. He is really it's the intellect of the feminine aspect, which is the partner of Zoh. Zoh is the 7 emotions. And the 7th one is Nukva, is the feminine aspect. And we're speaking about the intellect of that, the inside of that. So it turns out that Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, is really a vehicle of the feminine aspect of intellect, which is considered the lower intellect. Kiyadua, like it's known. V'achach nimshuch b'chinas hamidos. And afterwards, after the intellect, we have the midos, the measurements, the emotions, chagas. So chagas is the central emotions of chachma, chesed, gvura, tiferes, which is kindness, focus or strictness, and balance, beautiful balance. V'nihi, and then there's the emotions, the way they express themselves in practice. Netzach, winning, hide, recognizing the truth and sticking up for it. Yesod, attachment. Kamei melach b'mishpat yamid. The king judge sets up the country based on judgment, justice. What type of justice? Well, there needs to be kindness, there needs to be strictness, there needs to be a balance. The opportunity for people to make money. The opportunity for the freedom of speech, hide. Yesod, ability for people to meet each other safely, have coffee together safely, right? Yesod, yeah. Chulu, etc. K'maim Razal, like maybe it'll be better if I put it further. I'm not sure how it sounds better. Maybe it's too close. K'maimar Razal, like the rabbis have said, blessed memory, Yud Beis Shois Havayon. The day is 12 hours. Now, this is really about being time management, being efficient in time. So God has his schedule. The time of the day is 12 hours. Gimel Shas Yeshiv Esek. This is a quote for the Gemara. Gimel Shas Yeshiv Esek B'Torah. The first 3 hours, God sits and studies Torah. B'chinas Meichin Demidas. Why does God need to study the Torah? The Torah comes from him, right? No, so he's explaining he's reestablishing, reconnecting to making a focus of the Meichin Demidas, the intellect which runs the emotions. And that's what the Torah is. So getting aligned with the wisdom. V'gimel shois, and 3 hours, Yosher v'dan. God sits and judges. Al pia meichin, according to what he established with intellect. So he spends 3 hours every day building the intellect. And then, according to the directives which is created in those 3 hours, God sits and judges. So God has a schedule. 3 hours he studies Torah, 3 hours he judges. V'gimel shois yeshiv v'zan. For 3 hours, he sits and he gives sustenance. And that's connected with Nahi, because each hour connects with another emotion. The first 3 hours is Chachma Bina Das. Next 3 hours, or Kesach Chachma Bina. Next 3 hours is Chesed Gvura Tiferes, and then the third 3 hours he's doing Netzach Od Yesod, which is basically, the winning, the business, the attachment. I mean, where did the sales go through? When do most sales go through? So we have, let's say, starts off 6 o'clock in the morning. And during daylight saving, it will be 7 o'clock. But 6 o'clock in the morning, 6 to 7, 7 to 8, 8 to 9. That's the time when God learns. Then 9 to 10, 10 to 11, 11 to 12. That's when he judges. Then 12 to 3 is when he gives out the money. Now, I think, if I'm correct, most sales deals happen in those 3 hours between, after lunch, before the end of the day. People are under pressure. Business people have lunch at 12, right? Then they're under pressure. We got to finish. We got to get something done. We got to close the deal. And that's when the parnasa comes in the third 3 hours. Like it's written in another place at length. So align yourself, harmonize yourself sort of with these hours. So really what's happening first 3 hours, you're setting your head straight. That's when we daven, we study Torah. We study Torah about the greatness of God before we pray, in order to be able to pray properly, not to just say words. Then we pray, we're aligning our mind, and then we studying Torah afterwards. And that's like, let's say you get up. So I just had a schedule. I davened with a 7 o'clock minyan. 8 o'clock, I would be heading out of Crown Heights onto the train. And then the train trip to Newark is 1 hour and 15 minutes. The whole time I'll be studying Torah, the morning Torah. So by 9 o'clock, I'm studying work. That's when God already judges the world. And lunchtime, he starts giving out the money. What does he do the other hours? I think you have to look up the Gemara. I believe depends, Golos, not Golos. I think there's different things. I think in one of them he plays with his kids, with his children. later along. Well, that's family time. You come home after work and you have family time. So align yourself with these times. It says if a person starts studying Torah before it actually becomes light, which would be before 6, even if it's light already, it's considered nighttime. A string of blessing comes onto a person during the day because they started early. See the birth of the day, start early. So really these hours, this schedule is corresponding to Chachma bin Adas, intellect, internal emotions, and the emotions of getting involved with the world. And this is what it means. He created everything with insight, because the insight sort of permeates everything, creates everything. It creates boundaries. Insight includes and powers all the sayings, the midas of the emotions, pratis, specific midas, shebedvar melach, in the words of the king, because the words of the king create the world. V'ketargum Yonasan, like the translation of the Bible by Yonasan into Aramaic, Bereshis, he translates the word in the beginning, or in the beginning of, in the head of, B'chokhmasa, he translates it and he says B'chokhmasa, which means with insight. God created the world with insight. Kiyadua, like it's known. U'mechadesh b'chol yom ma'aseh Bereshis, and God renews the actions of the world every single day, according to the intellect that he establishes in the first 3 hours. Midas in the of the that are driving the midas, the meichin that have been implanted in the emotions, the malchus of expression, the atzilus of atzilus. Yered lebia, it goes down to the bia, basically becomes God's conscious thought, speech, and action. That's the 3 worlds of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya. B'chol yom, every single day, b'chidushay efanim, in different ways, shainim, in different various ways. So basically, you, by praying in the morning, you're really part of a new day. You basically help to partner how the day is going to go, because God is learning Torah. So when you're learning Torah, He's learning with you. And if you're doing good learning, that sort of motivates or triggers that we get like a reflecting effect from above. Everything that happens in above, God makes it comes from us. So if we connect properly when we daven, then we can ask for a new intellect to come down in a new way. So really, it's about having a successful schedule, schedule, not that you're successful. You cause the world to be a successful world. Or you trigger that. You said Malchus, the expression of Atzilus receives from Netzach you said, which is victory, recognizing of truth, which is also beautiful. You said an attachment, the Zah of the emotions of Zah, and it transforms from a potential to an actuality. Because from the intellect of the father and mother of Atzilus, which are like the advisors, it's a process that God has inside Himself. The advisors of Atzilus, we create new intellect, new drivers. In computer programming world, we'll say like new drivers that like make everything happen. Lazun, to the emotions of Atzilus and the feminine aspect of Atzilus, which is then going to mirror what's actually going to happen. B'chol yom, every single day, chulu, etc. Acha b'chol eis, b'shah. And in fact, I mean, we don't want to make this reduce the world to this mechanicalism. But the truth is that every single time, every single hour, there's a new energy, there's a new sustenance, and it comes down from the original source, which is actually the pleasure and the want, which is undefined yet, but it which is an expression of the unlimited before Atzilus. Like we say in prayers, Malchuscha, Malchus Kol Alamim, your essential expression is really what becomes the expression for all the worlds. Kiyadua, like it's known. And now we're going to see changes in history. Now, what's going on? What happens where we have this like a mass formation with everybody hyper focuses on something? There's an anxiety, and then people are hyper focusing on something, and they sort of get into a hypnotic state where they can be very clever in one area and totally dumb as a bat in other areas, like deny reality and not have a proper understanding of the reality of the situation. Like yesterday, I was traveling on the train, and I saw people like, I don't know, they're putting this something to stop their free breathing of air on their noses and mouths, and they didn't like read the we would call it the science, the studies. They didn't, and they're just like doing that, and it's just really hard to understand. So why are people like lacking in intellect, and sometimes and other times they're really awake? What's going on? So that's a reflection. Bechinas esser spheres the malchus. These 10 spheres of expression, lefamim heim bechinas katnos. Sometimes they are in a way of katnos. Sometimes these emotions are a way of gadlos. Katnos is small, gadlos is big. In other words, do they see the bigger picture, or are they nitpicking in their life? Are they like hyper focused on a nitpick, or do they have a wider perception of what's actually going on? Well, that's because the Esespheres, that's what's happening with the Esespheres. Sometimes Esespheres are in a state of katnos where their driver is like a smaller level inside the Shlashul. So sometimes they're godless, that they're aligned with the higher levels of Chachma and everything. And that's godless. Al derech hanal. Besespheres Tazah, like we explained above, in a similar way in the 10 spheres of Zoh, sheyesh meichim the godless for katnos. There's different ways of these emotions being driven by the brains. It's called gadlus, big brains, v'katnos, and small brains, like a child or an adult. A child gets upset at small things, he can't see far ahead, and a gadlus, an adult, sees the repercussions of their actions, and they have a bigger view, and they don't get upset about small things. And that's because we've explained it depends where the Chachma Bin are getting the energy from. If they're getting the energy only for the Nehi, or they're getting the energy for the Chagas, a deeper level, that's a time where the spirit of man is being developed, Chagas, or even they're getting from the Mazalos of Arachampin. And that means that the intellect is great, and has a tremendous vision of the world, and when the intellect is totally small is when it's getting benihi, when it's getting run by the nehi, only by the third level of spheres. They're the external vessels. This is a cup, right? There's three vessels. One holds intellect. The second one holds human spirit, and the third one is more transactional. So b'chitenius akelim is only the transactional aspect of the intellect is what's running everything. Kach b'chinas is gadlus, kach b'chinas is galus, the malchus. Kach b'chinas is galus, the malchus, shenivda b'partzuf b'fnei atzma. When malchus becomes revealed, it starts to get its own parts of, means facial expression, its own personality, b'fnei atzma. So sometimes the brains are in a state of greatness, b'mides, and they inspire the emotions, where the insight and the comprehension are awakened b'malchus in a clear way in the expression of the it's like an intellectual person that's speaking sanity. It's expressed in their emotions. Shemizgalim bedibur, and the emotions are getting revealed in the speech, and it just makes so much sense. And sometimes what shines is just katnos, small-mindedness. And sometimes there is extra super small-mindedness, where there is like a mass hypnosis of the people, and they're super small-minded. Like it's written in the Zohar al Pasuk on the verse, Shchira ani, I am black. Why I'm black? Because I'm just black. Over here is referring to the idea of not revelation of light, like darkness. Like I don't see. You don't see the deep understanding behind it. Aziris karma vavidas kenukuda. Malchus is making itself so small, and it's just like a little dot. It's like a dot underneath a yud. The letter yud is the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and that underneath it you put a little dot as a grammatic, and that's Malchus. And actually, this happened in history, where Esther became the vessel of Malchus, and Achashverosh, the king, represented on a spiritual level God, and V'tipa lifnei raglav, and she fell in front of his feet, which that caused the spiritual situation where Malchus became like a little dot to receive from higher, but that became also a new renewal. Now we can understand this difference in times of small-mindedness and great-mindedness. It's also happens every week. That's the difference between the days of the week, the Shabbos and the Shabbos. The Shabbos is a different energy. The Shabbos makabelas machagas dezah. What happens is it's not just transactional, but there is a spirit. Malchus is receiving from Chagas, spirit, ruach. Chagas is in the respiratory part. Take a deep breath. That's what happens on Shabbos. It's not just a transactional. You know, why do people go on a vacation? Not we'll call it a holiday. That's a better way. Why do people go on a holiday? Because on a holiday, people They want to have a change of scenery. They want to be able to see things differently. They don't want to be stuck in their small-mindedness. And that's what Shabbos is. Take a deep breath. What we say in one song that we sing by the meal on Friday night. Yaminu Usmala, the right hand and the left hand, and in between them is the chala. The kala, which is the bride, Yaminu Usmala. So it's a hug. Right hand and left hand, and in between them is the bride. It's a hug. But really, it's also representing the idea of Yaminu Smala, the right hand and left hand, God's the kindness of Atzilus and the strictness of Atzilus, the higher emotions, not just transactional emotions. Abenayu Chala, a hugging the Chala, which is the expression. That's what's being expressed in the world, the higher emotions. It's Gadlus Hameichin. There's a higher state of being. And sometimes Malchus receives its energy, the expression of the world, the spirit of the world. It receives face to face, which means a higher form of energy. I should be until the highest level, Yom Kippurim. What happens in Olam Malchus at Pnimis Atik Yemin? Malchus, the expression, goes up, elevates itself to the inner aspects of the higher days, which Atik Yemin, the difference between Atik Yemin and Arechanpin is Atik Yemin is more about not, what you want. Person wants a Ferrari, I want a holiday house, no, it's about what do you want to achieve in that house? What state do you want to achieve? What's your end state? What is not the thing, but what's inside the thing? It's not the cup, it's the water, right? The the Malchus, the Atzilus. And what happens is the vessels, the words of the 10 spheres of the expression Matzelos, these are really God's statements, the Yud Maimaris of the 10 sayings, with which he continues to repeat to create the world. And there's 3 stages, 3 levels: transactional, deeper emotions, and intellectual. Like we explained in Machshava and thought, you can have thought of thought, speech of thought, and pictures of thought. We just said it. So thought in speech. So thought in speech, bechinas kli chabad. That is the vessel to get meaning. Chabad, chachma bin adas, insight, comprehension, focus, meaning. The nukva of the feminine aspect, which is really a mirroring, which really mirrors what's happening higher. V'dibur shebadibur, and speech of speech, b'chinas kli hevel hadibur. So what's speech of speech? That is basically the air of the speech. Lemides, and it's a vessel for the feelings, because my emotions are expressed through the tone of my voice. Lemides the dibur, basically the emotions, my tone of the speech. An action in speech, that's really a vessel for the transactional emotions, the malchus of a malchus, of winning, recognizing truth, beautifully recognizing truth, and sticking up for what's right, and yesod attachment. And then what happens is it's the expression of the expression, the Atzilus of the world of Atzilus, that breaks the boundary of the curtain, basically that becomes conscious, because all of this is still not conscious thought, and that breaks the curtain and becomes conscious thought, which actually makes the conscious creation of the world, because we are the thoughts of God, the thought, speech, and action of God. We are inside God, and He's thinking about us, and that's what is bringing us our existence. Rabbi Smith, were you able to get onto the call?
Yes, Rabbi Cherek, I am right here. Can you see me?
Rabbi Smith?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
I don't see Rabbi Smith, so we're going.
1 second here. Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, so we're going to continue to the explanation. Vira Dvarim. The explanation of the matter is like this: Yodua, it's known. The machshava de bedibur, thought in speech. Hainu al derech mashal. This is like the metaphor. Machshava shemislabash dibur, like the thought that gets enclosed in the words. Shalom medaber, basically, it's intellectual thought.
Here, can you hear me?
Speaking as a davar something. Mashe bevadai b'chol dibur prati melubash machshava pratis. Each single specific thought, there is each single word, there is a specific thought which is enclosed in it. Shebepratis the dibur zeh, which is specifically in this thought. Because the way we thinking of how to set up our words in the thought, that's exactly how this speech works out. In other words, think before you speak. Think before you speak. Canal, like we mentioned above, the ikvei Leah, the heels of Leah, nechnasim l'techresh Rachel, go into the head of Rachel. In this mamish, it sounds like some military code.
Rabbi Cherek, can you see me?
But you know, like how they speak on the radio, you don't understand what they're saying, and they saying like, they're giving you know, everything, the codes. They're giving everything different names. So you say the heels of Leah. The heels of Leah go into the heels of Leah go into the head of Rachel. What does that mean? Right? We've spoken about it before. So we're saying the heels of Leah. Leah represents God's conscious thought. Rachel represents, she's larger than life. She represents God speaking. So Leah, which represents God's thinking, her heels, the lowest level of her thought, runs the speech, Rachel. That's what it means. The bechinas dibur shebamachshava, that from the words in thought, from the words in thought, in other words, the thought thinking what it should speak, that becomes the thought which drives the speeches.
Can you hear me?
Including it is how to which words to choose, how to speak in a general way and in a specific way, every detail. For example, when we go into the parts of the God saying, "Let there be light," and he hasn't stopped saying that, because there wouldn't be any light if he would stop saying that, right? Here he's saying, "Let there be light." So the thought of this statement, behind this statement, "Let there be light,"
Hello.
So it's considered a Maimon Sosum. Why? Because we don't know who the speaker is, because the speakers are not identified. Okay, keep it here. No, I think God says that let there be light. So I a little got confused in what's going on over here. Oh, I get it. When God says, let there be light, and we identify the speaker, there is a speech behind that, which the speaker is unidentified, and that is the hidden speech, the hidden speech, which charges this speech. That's called Maimer Sasum. Gamken ki loy ba begiloi rak hadibur, because the inner speech is not revealed, only the leba begiloi rak hadibur the here. Only the words you hear. So the meaning of what the light will mean, and what is light? What is light? So there's a radio frequency, and then there's microwave, and then there's visual light, visible light to our human eye, and then there's gamma rays. So this whole idea of what all of this is, and much more than what we don't know, that's considered the Maimer Sosum. That's the hidden speech. And all we see, all this Rak Hadibur, only the here, let there be light. Machshavazu, Bechinas Kli Chabad. And this thought is a vessel for the intent. Chabad is the thinking, the intent, the Maimer here. Zed, the here of let there be light. Shu Bechinas HaChesed the Malchus. And what is light? Light is really an expression of the kindness, the Chesed, the kindness of the expression. In other words, Malchus expression has kindness, and that's being expressed. And what is that? That's life. But the light that we're speaking about is not only a light as invisible light, but it's also a state of being, La'elaf Shana Rishonim, for the first 1,000 years, a state of being of high level of energy, of kindness for the first 1,000 years. That's why the people lived almost 1,000 years at that time, in the first 1,000 years. As I'm going to explain. And then there's a thought which triggers, and the Mamahirakia, let there be a firmament. Firmament means interface between spirituality and physicality. And that represents the idea of judgment and cutting and making definitions, the malchus of this malchus, of this expression, hu bechinas kli meichen lemidazu. And basically, this statement here is basically capturing this intent, this intentional intent of creating focus and division and strength. And that was a big deal in the second 1,000 years. And in the second 1,000 years, it didn't work out well for a lot of people, because they brought upon brought a flood upon themselves. And so too with all of the 6 emotions, the malchus of God's expression. In other words, every 1,000 years, there's a different theme of a different midah. The one we're in is about Yesod, attachment, relationships, attachment. I see there's somebody writing on the screen. And so to the malchus, so too in all the 6 emotions of malchus of expression, the intent in them, the intent, the thought is what captures the intent. And the vessels for the internal emotions the spirit emotions, V'nehi, and the internal emotions, and the nehi, which is the transactional emotions. So what captures that is dibur shebedibur, the speech of speech. The speech of speech. Because the person's tone captures their emotions. This is the words of kindness. When we speak kindly, oyadin, or we speak harshly, shebedibur, in speech atzmei, shebedvar gzeras melech, in the words of the ruling of the king, yesh begimel elah. There are different modes. There's chesed, kindness, din, judgment, verachmim, and compassion. Bechinas hagas. I was on a bunch of, I had the opportunity to be on a bunch of Zoom calls with CEOs, some of the major CEOs. And, they don't know how everything about the company necessarily. Some of them are not involved in the operation. Some are. But one thing that they are involved in is in the finances, that they have to make sure the company makes a profit. But they don't. So they look at the C team, the chief this, the chief that, and the C team says that a certain person, that they're let's explain it a different way. A customer calls up, a customer, a high-level management in a company calls up about a certain product, and then he speaks to the CEO of that company and says, "Hey, your team that you introduced me to, they're doing a good job. They did good service." So you know what happens? So the CEO is very happy. He doesn't really know what's going on. He's getting feedback from the outside. He's really happy with his staff, and it works out well for them. But if he gets feedback that your guys don't know what they're doing, so these people might lose their jobs or be reallocated. So there's like different. The CEO is like a little king in the company. So there's like it could be like chesed, kindness. It could be din. It could be like tough. Verachmim could be like a compassion, which is more of a rachmim is a better state, because the person has compassion means they take a wide view of the truth of what's really going on, the good and the bad. Chagas. Rachmim is the best. Compassion rules. Fudvar melach, and the words of the king, in the tone of the voice, these things get expressed. Var melech bedibur, the words of the king, bedibur, in words, be'oisias mamish, and in actual words, all of this gets expressed, and it's a vehicle. It's a vessel of the speaking of the king is and it expresses it as a vessel for those emotions. V'hachma midis shemizgala behu bechinas hatzura. V'hachma v'midis, and the insight and the intellect, b'amidis, and the emotion shemizgalaba, that is revealed through the speech, ubechinas atzura. That's what we call tzura, shape. Shibadiva. That's the shape of the diva. Shenikra ruach mamalala. This is the wind of the speech. Nefesh anaberach, a soul that speaks. It creates a shape. It creates form. The emotion gives something the words form. So it's called speech of speech, or the words give the emotion form. Sorry, the words give the emotions form. Kidu, like it's known. Ubechinas, on the third level, the actual action steps in speech. Shu kli netzach yisod, which is the vessel of the transactional emotions. It's the yes, no, go. Hainu ma sheba b'dibur. It's what comes into speech. Tzivu el ha'maisa, a command to action. B'pel mamish, we want actually do something, an actual step. God God says, let it be so, but B'Pel Mamish in actuality, because Moshe HaMelech Mitzvah says Davar B'Pel Mamish, like a king that commands something should be done in actuality. Like they say, let's pull, and in real estate, they say, pull the trigger. We don't actually pull a trigger, we press a trigger, but anyway. But that's what they say in real estate. In the computer world, they say, oh, we need to have a conversation about that we'll actually get it done. Shetchila gozer omer Shetchila gozer omer the Dvar Mishpat, because he makes a decree in words of judgment. Shenikra Dibur, it's called words. The Gezeres HaMelech and the rule of the king. Now in America, see, Api Halacha, a king can make a rule if it's consistent on everybody, and it's considered a valid rule. Otherwise, it's not considered valid. And a king, it means somebody that's in charge of that actually his face is on the dollars of that country. So, but in America, the kingship is divided into Shofet, judgment, Shater, police, which is the executive branch, and the president represents the executive branch. It's part of the executive branch, and there's Mechekek, and there's the lawmakers, which is supposed to be listening to the people. So the Melech doesn't really make Gzeres HaMelech. All he can do is implement the Gzeira of what the people want. So an executive order can only be really implementing what the people want. Otherwise, it's a false order. Anyway, and basically the judgment the judgment really is supposed to kolul machagas, is supposed to match the spirit. The judgment is supposed to match the spirit. 1 second, I'm just taking a call. Hello? Okay, maybe there's something wrong with my headset. Okay, I'm going to check the settings. Okay. We're going to check the settings.
Hello, can you hear me? Everyone else can hear me.
1 second.
Turn on the light. Here I'm in my. Yeah.
Chat, there's 27 things in the chat. Wow. Invite, I don't know.
The chat is just telling you that other people could hear me. When you asked Rabbi Smith,
select a speaker, select a microphone. Speaker. Speaker's high definition. Oh. It's the wrong place. 1 second, maybe this is going to work.
Now can you hear me?
Second. Rabbi Smith, can you speak?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Oh, Baruch Hashem.
Amazing. So I wasn't able to hear anything.
Okay. On a webinar, it's challenging because the attendees can't speak. So as a result, you don't know that you're missing out. Okay. So anyway, I'm here.
Okay, 1 second. I'm gonna continue on inside because I'm on the roll to the end.
So, okay, so then just start sharing the screen again, because because I tried to communicate with you through a whiteboard and I canceled the screen share. I was the one writing on the screen. I was trying to tell you, hey, I'm here. I try to communicate with you.
So let's stretch. Let's go. Okay, I'm gonna share the screen.
I'm gonna turn on my my video and I'm gonna go back into the wedding and you'll let me know when you're ready, okay?
So 1 second. So what happens is after you have the conversation, which is according to the spirit of the law,
Don't forget him.
then we come to the judgment, to the psak din, a command to take action to execute on that. That's what nehi is all about. Bechinas kli nehi, and the vessel of nehi is bechinas esis adibur, is basically the words in the speech that we're just focusing on getting it done. When a person moves their lips, it's action. This is the moving of the lips. It's the action of the speech. The fact that we cut the speech, lovely de mamish, to come to actual action. Because there's sometimes speaking which is a conversation which is not for action. But that's not nehi. Nehi is about action speech. Here, and this is what it means. Here, let there be light. Vrakia, let there be a interface between spirituality and physicality. B'maisa davka, and it means in action. So it's a vessel for God's action. And the action happens. That from this speech the world happens. Vayehi were, and light happened, and there was light. But high governance, similarly, kedvara melech, like God speaks, nasa. That's shenasa. That's what mizeh apel mamish. That's what happens in actuality. Huinyan malchus sheba malchus. That's when we say malchus the malchus atzilus, the expression of the expression. Because the first expression is we see the author, but that's not what our world looks like. We don't see God speaking. It's an expression of an expression. It looks separate. We don't see God speaking. Change the rak b'v'chinas b'bei hashefa b'v'chinas makar ishavas yesh mayim. That's already the malchus of the malchus, means that we already, it's the creation of the concrete from the abstract mamish in actuality. V'hainu b'chinas malchus the malchus d'atzilus. Remember this. Malchus of Malchus means the expression of the expression. In other words, we don't see the author of Atzilus. That breaks through the curtain, the firewall, from subconscious thought to conscious thought. That becomes the source of Bria, of conscious thought, which is already a creation. Like we're going to explain, and that's what we said till now is enough for the understanding person. V'gam hu edaim bechinas atzilus. By the way, Malchus of Malchus is still considered atzilus, still considered part of divinity. V'nikra bechinas asiyas sheba Malchus. It's just the action part of expression. The atzilus al derech mashul keach hapula. Basically, it's the power to do. Nivdeles mekach hapel. It's already separating. So I'm causing an action. And it's happening. Who, even when you're doing something, we're doing something, right? It's action. But what happens? So there's a cause and effect. Effect is malchus de malchus. Malchus is a cause. Malchus de malchus is an effect. Like we're explaining in another place. And I'm going to unmute you, Rabbi Smith, because I've just completed chapter 49. Maybe we can look at some questions.
Yeah, Rabbi, there's not really questions there. What they are is just chats between me and everyone else about the fact that you couldn't hear me. So I didn't see any questions. If anyone has any questions, please post them, because now's your chance.
So we learned about God's schedule.
It's exactly when he wants it.
Well, It follows 3 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours. Plus
I
3
thought you were
hours.
saying everything. Yeah. Go ahead.
God
Say
studies
it again.
Torah
So
from 6 to 9 a.m. From 9 to 12, he judges, and then he gives out the money from 12 to 3, straight after lunch.
So we should only work from 12 to 3 then. We should learn until 9.
No. So the Satmar Taka only start working at 12. Yeah.
Okay, makes sense.
Satmar learn Torah till 12.
Okay.
But it would make sense from 9 to 12 to make the relationships, because that's Chagas. That's the time to make the relationships.
What, from 9 to 12, you said?
Yeah, and to close the deal from 12 to 3.
Okay.
And from 6 to 9 is to set the head straight.
In the morning. And what's from 3 to 6? Someone asked in the chat.
So God plays with his kids,
Gonna go.
which is family time already.
Okay.
No, but
Sounds
the
good.
Satmar work from 12 to 7 because they started a day late. They start.
Beautiful. Can you see? You want to end the screen share, and then I'll see if my video appears.
Okay, I'm going to end the screen share. Maybe we can make another. We wanted to speak about. We wanted to make a little
Yeah.
video about something. I just want to let's make a short video about that.
Okay, good.
Just let's stop the
So I'm
recording.
gonna
Stop the
stop.
recording.
Stop the recording. We'll start again. Yeah, absolutely.